Hello, everyone. I am Jillian Moore. I'm one of the data account managers with MGMA. We also have Stephanie Gerlach and Owen Kemp joining us. I know some of you work with them as well. Some important news of this week is that we just released our highly anticipated 2022 provider compensation data dive. If you are interested in accessing this or would like to talk to us about access options for MGMA, please reach out to your account manager after this call. Our data strategist, Liz Gurley, will be showing us this new interface, and we'll post her contact details to the chat for any of you that don't have a dedicated MGMA contact yet. We'll also be sending out the recording for this webinar to all attendees, so feel free to share that with your friends and colleagues if they weren't able to join us live. So MGMA DataDive is one of the premier offerings to the healthcare industry, helping the medical practice community operate in an optimal level through the utilization of benchmarking data. We listen to you, our members, and our data users and received feedback over the last few years with the goal of enhancing the DataDive experience and the ease of use. And what you're about to see is a completely refreshed version of DataDive designed to provide ease of use and navigation and overall better flow as you navigate the data sets. So first, I'd like to start by introducing our MGMA team here on the call. First, we have Andrew Walker, the National Director of Organizational Membership. We have our data strategist team, Liz Gurley and Liz Parker on the call as well. And then you'll be hearing from Lauren Jones, especially in the chat today. She's the Senior Account Manager with Organizational Membership. Megan Wong is our Director of Data Solutions. And Michelle Mattingly is the Senior Manager of Data Solutions. So thank you so much for taking your time with us today, and I'm going to pass this over to Liz.
Thank you so much, Jillian, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon to hear all about our new platform of DataDive UX, the user experience. This launched just this week, as Jillian mentioned, and it's also in conjunction with the release of the 2021 provider compensation data. So super exciting things going on here around MGMA this week. So thank you so much for joining and giving us the opportunity to speak with you a little bit about that. Skip this here. So just talking about DataDive UX. So just as Jillian mentioned, we really wanted to take the feedback from our users, our members, our clients over the last previous time to really take that information and then provide some enhancements and some more intuitive experiences within DataDive. So we had a really great group of employees here at MGMA take that feedback and then apply that to the system, making for a better user experience for you. Just to start back and provide you some information with MGMA reporting history. So in the 80s, for those of you that have been with MGMA for quite some time, this is when the printed reports became available. So we had the data sets that were in printed report form. You would create an order, and then you would be waiting for that shipment to be sent to you, thus creating some change or some challenges. So you're creating that order and the delay in time in which you're receiving that information. So maybe you needed that information pretty quickly. You needed to provide that in a presentation or to generate reports for yourself, maybe extend some offers, and you're waiting for that information. So keeping up with technology, in the 90s, we decided to release the CDs. So again, keeping up with technology and allowing for more ease of access to the data information. In the 90s, when we had these CDs, it was great because you had that more access. However, with that being said, there were also some challenges we faced then as well. So the inventory was a little bit more limited. The real estate was limited. You didn't have as many functionalities or capabilities to filter the data down. So in 2008 is when we launched the web version of DataDive, again, allowing for more access. You can see where I'm going with this each time. We're wanting to make a better experience for our users here. So this was great because you did have the capabilities now with the filtering. So you were able to add some filters on and export those reports out. That's bringing us to today in 2022. So during between the time frame of 2008 to 2022. We've had some different versions that have launched for DataDive, again, for those of you that have been with us for some time. And we've always wanted to take the feedback of our members, users, clients, to make those immediate changes into the system and make for a better user experience. We feel like we have done just that. So I'm actually going to move into a live demonstration of DataDive and to show you some of the new platform changes and show you some of the new functioning capabilities. Bear with me just a second as I pull that screen over here. All right. So what you should be seeing now is our DataDive landing page. So you're still going to access the same as you do previously. Excuse me. So from your dashboard page, you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. There's going to be a highlighted tab that says data, and inside of there, it will say access DataDive. Once you do so, it brings you to this landing page here. And just to provide you some insight on each one of these tabs, so participate in a survey is how any of our survey participants go to submit their data to us. So they do so via this link here. Once that data has been submitted to us, it goes to our data analytics team, who really works around the clock for some time, verifying and validating all of that data. As you can imagine, there's a lot of checks and balances that go into that process. Once they verified and validated all that data, then they start to release. So currently, we're in that survey cycle season right now. And as I mentioned previously, we just launched the provider compensation and production this week. So we're currently capturing all of that data, verifying, validating it. And as that becomes available, it will start to be released by our data analytics team. Okay. Next is this MGMA stat. What this is it's a free weekly polling text feature. So if you'd like to sign up, you can do so via this link. You receive a text message on Tuesday from MGMA with a poll question related to various topics within the healthcare industry. We're seeing a lot of questions come up right now regarding staffing shortages. We certainly recognize that our members, our practices, our users are all experiencing staffing shortages. It's happening across the board, and I think that's just part of the industry right now. So you would receive a polling question on Tuesday, and then on Thursday, you receive the follow-up or the results from that poll or whatever the results were from that. And then you also will receive some links that will take you to some resources and education within MGMA. We have a senior advisor team that works with the industry to pull some of that education and resources together for you. So those links will take you right to that information. DataDive Spotlight is a tool in which we take the granular level of data out of DataDive and we put it into different graphing forms. This is really meant to give you a quick overview, snapshot of data. If you're not necessarily wanting to apply all the filters and get to that real granular level, you just need a quick overview of your net income loss. This is where you can find that information very quickly. Data Discovery is a new tool that was launched with MGMA just a few months ago. In a nutshell, it's an interactive visualization dashboard. So it has the capability to sync to an organization's electronic medical record system. And it allows for you to input your KPIs or your targeted goals from your organization or practices. By doing that sync, it then will highlight the highs and lows or pinpoint the highs and lows of each metric, telling you, yes, you're meeting this goal, or maybe there's an area of opportunity. If you're interested in data discovery, you certainly can drop your information into the chat. Well, somebody from our team will reach out to you and we'll schedule a separate demonstration for you. The last tab we have here, what we're focusing on today, is going to be DataDive. So you'll just access still the same way. Once we access, there's going to be some immediate changes that happen. So because I'm currently looking at data, it put me into a data set. When you log in the first couple of times, you're going to have a yellow bar that comes across the top. Because I've been in and out of this data set pretty frequently, my yellow bar has disappeared. I've used this report quite a lot since it's launched. But you'll have a yellow bar that populates across the top and it'll say click here for resources. The resources that can be found in that yellow tab are going to be things such as a user guide, our data set glossaries, some tutorials. It's really just acknowledging, hey, we have a new platform and we'd like to help you navigate through some of that. So you certainly can click on that and it'll provide you some additional resources. Okay. As I mentioned, DataDive is a pretty cool tool in the sense that it's always going to put you back into a data set. So wherever you were last accessing during your last session, that's the data set it's going to put you into. For those of you that have been around with us for a while and users, you'll notice that the navigation piece of the platform has moved from the top now to the left-hand side. So previously it was on the top, we would have a couple steps, step 1, 2, and 3, depending on which data set you were in. We've now moved that over to the left-hand side, providing for easier visibility into your tables and the information that you're pulling, okay? You can click this back arrow here at the top, and that's going to expand it even further and condense that navigation tool for you all the way to the left-hand side. Just want to mention, as I'm going through the data today and as you're seeing some of the data sets that we're going to hop into, this is reflecting full access at an organizational membership level. So the different years that I have that populate and some of the different capabilities that I have exporting to Excel, things of that nature, may not necessarily reflect in your screen the same. You may have different access or maybe purchasing different access. So if you're interested in what I'm showing today, if you're looking for full access is what I'm going to be showing, please drop your information into the chat feature. We can have somebody reach out to you and explain some of the different access capabilities and information that we have for you. Okay. So to change the data sets or to look at all the different data sets that we have, you'll simply just click on change data set here. You'll see that all of our data sets are now going to be listed out, starting with provider compensation. So in provider compensation, the metrics or benchmarks that we can find are related to total compensation. We have some productivity measures, so total RVUs and worked RVUs. We also can see things such as total encounters, total patients, anything related to the provider compensation. We also have compensation broken out to reflect different categories. So we have academic compensation for our academic facilities, medical directorship, on-call compensation, and then this provider placement starting salary. This last category is going to be reflective of those providers who are 1 year post-residency or fellowship, or maybe not necessarily new to practicing medicine, but they're new to your organization. You can find additional benchmarks as it's related to compensation for those new providers, things such as sign-on bonuses or maybe even relocation fees. Next, we have procedural profile. This is a CPT billing and coding profile that allows for providers to benchmark other providers in the same specialty to identify some of those billing and coding patterns. We use this pretty often if we're looking for ways to generate additional revenue. It's a good way to ensure that you're not necessarily missing billing and coding opportunities within your own practice. Moving on here, we have management and staff. So management and staff focuses on the salaries, benefits, wages related to all of those positions who are outside of providers. So if you're looking to onboard a medical assistant, if you're looking for clinical support staff, non-clinical support staff, HR, IT, again, all of those positions that are outside of providers, this is where we're going to be able to see their compensation. Moving on, cost and revenue. This data set focuses on data that's submitted to us at a practice level in terms of different costs. So looking at your operating cost, also looking at revenue. So maybe your aging bucket, 0 to 30, 31 to 60, so on and so forth. We can also look at expenses at a granular level. And this is also where we find our staffing ratios. So maybe you're opening a new practice and you're saying, I need to know how many medical assistants I need for a urologist. This is where we can benchmark some of that information. Last is going to be practice operations. So this really focuses on the overall structure of the practice. This is looking at things such as third next available appointment time, tying in some of those patient satisfaction KPIs that we know and love. So looking at things such as wait times in the waiting room, wait times in the exam room. We also can pull turnover and hire rates. That information is going to be located in this data set. In addition to that, we also have patient portal utilization. I'm going to go ahead and start in provider compensation just to provide some examples. We're going to hop into each one so I can show you some of that functionality in each one of the data sets. Excuse me. So starting here with provider compensation, again, that's looking at the overall, bear with me just a second here. Again, that's looking at the overall compensation. So if we're looking at total compensation or we're looking at productivity measures, if we're looking at annual encounter numbers, that's a way in which we can find this information. Bear with me just a second here. And hop right back into DataDive. This is certainly not going to be your experience when you're logging in here. I have a couple different screens open, so appreciate your patience as I get into the system and kind of navigate through that. Okay, so changing our data set, provider compensation, we're going to go to 2019, take a peek at that data here. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and start with total compensation. So I've selected my benchmark here. You'll see as I hit this drop down, there's going to be several different benchmarks that you can choose from. And then I want to talk a little bit about the filtering here. Apologize, I'm going to remove some of these filters that are currently in my table so that I can add them in and explain to you what we're reflecting. Starting here with compare data by, and this is a way in which we can apply a filter. So if we're wanting to take our data from a national level and apply a filter to separate that, I'm going to show you what a couple of those filters look like. Some that we use very frequently, and the first one I'm going to add is organizational ownership. What this does is it takes the data from that national level and it now provides a side-by-side comparison. So we can compare private and physician-owned practices in comparison to those hospital integrative delivery systems. You'll see as the table generates, I now have total compensation and it is compared by for physician or privately practice-owned practices and then hospital integrative delivery systems. You'll also see by default this other majority owner. So this is related to those providers who typically work for insurance companies or governmental agencies as well. Another one we use frequently is going to be this geographic section. I'm going to show you where we find this information as soon as I generate this example for you. But what it is it's MGMA has taken a map of the United States and we've broken that up into 4 different regions. So wherever your state is located in one of those regions, for example, I'm in the state of Colorado. I'm going to be in that Western region, and it allows for me to add a filter. So now I can compare the Eastern, Western, Midwest, and Southern sections right next to each other when I'm looking at benchmarks such as compensation. So you'll see now we have those different sections here. Limit data by, oh, I apologize, let me go back quickly. So trend is another one that we use pretty frequently when we're looking at compare data by. I use this when I'm looking at things such as encounters, total patients, or worked RVUs. When we're looking at trend, we recognize we're always wanting to see that upward trend in these different benchmarks. So this is a way that allows for me to see 3 years trending of that data. So as I'm looking at this, I can see 2017, the year over year change to 2018, year over year change to 2019, and then that overall change for the last 3 years. Keep in mind, I'm viewing 2019 data, so that's why these years are showing for me. As you select the applicable year, these will reflect that way appropriately. Again, that all practices level is going to be that national level of data. So taking all of that data, regardless of where you're located in the United States, regardless of how you identify as privately owned or hospital IDS, it's combining all that information and producing one value. Limit data by is taking the filtering capability a step further. So for example, let's say that I'm a hospital IDS family practice, and I also am located in the southern region. It's just another way in which we can filter that data down even further. For lack of better terminology, it's stacking the filtering on top of each other. Okay, you'll see directly underneath this, we have percentiles and measures. So we can add in our sample size, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment, and additional percentiles as well. Okay. You will indicate, or that will reflect in your table as you add a filter on top of a filter. Maybe you're really wanting to narrow down that information. Sometimes if we're applying a filter and shrinking our sample size, another filter, we will get these asterisks in place of a data point in our table. What this is indicating is that the data did not meet the threshold requirements to meet the sample size in order for us to publish for benchmarking purposes. Okay. We do have threshold requirements that need to be met. As I'm speaking to you about this, I'm going to add your sample size into the table here. So the threshold requirements that need to be met are we need to receive data from at least 3 separate organizations on behalf of 10 individual providers. If either one of those are not met or the sample size has been shrunk down too small, that's where you're going to see that asterisk in place of the data point. So for example, when I'm looking at total compensation for allergy and immunology, we received data from 126 different organizations on behalf of 306 individual providers, thus producing this median value that's going to show for us here. Okay. For clinical pharmacology, That's where we're receiving that information for only one, and why we're not seeing anything in the table, we're just seeing that asterisk. By default, we are always at MGMA going to publish that median value or that 50th percentile. The reason being is this is best practice. We always recommend referring to the median value. So by default, that's always what's going to show, but you certainly have the ability to add in those additional percentiles. So let's say that I want to look at the 50th percentile, but I also want to pull the 75th percentile. By selecting that under percentile and measures, it's now going to create an additional column for me. So now I have that 50th percentile and that 75th percentile as well. To talk a little bit about the table itself, you'll see that it starts alphabetically with allergy immunology. And as I scroll down the table here, certainly don't want to make anybody seasick, but as I scroll down here, it's going to start over again alphabetically after urology. What this is indicating is the transition from those physician level providers, so your MDs and DOs, to your APP level providers. So below in the bottom of the table, we can find positions, licensed clinical social workers, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. Again, any of those APP level providers, it's just organized in the way that the physicians are at the top of the table, and at the bottom of the table are going to be those APP level providers. When using this table, honestly speaking, most efficient way is to use the search button. So as I start to type in cardiology, you'll see any of those positions, regardless if they're physician or APP, are going to pull up as I start to type in cardiology. So now I can see my physicians, and then I can also see those APP level providers at the bottom. You also can click through. So if you know you're just wanting to focus on a couple of them, I already have some selected. So you just go through, you hit the check mark here, and then push this button at the top, and now it's going to condense it for you. So as I've selected those different specialties going through my list, I can condense, and then it's all just going to be located here for me. Again, you have the ability to export this information out. This is showing a full access. So I do have the ability to export out to Excel. You do have the ability to export out to PDF, which is going to be across the board for users. And then we do have the ability to save all of these reports. So if I know that I'm going to be referring back to cardiology invasive for compensation, maybe I'm going through a hiring spree and I know that I'm going to be onboarding a lot of those physicians, I would always recommend creating your table and then saving it. It's going to house it for you up here under saved tables. Most efficient way, so you're not recreating each single time that you come in. Okay. What I'm looking at currently is a specialty view. So what I would have to acknowledge is that I'm selecting a benchmark. So right now I have total compensation selected, and then I'm going to select which specialty I want to look at. Let's say that I need to then go back and look at worked RVUs and then create a table, and then go back and look at total encounters and then create a table. There's a pretty cool function that you're able to utilize. I say cool, please take that with a grain of salt because I do love data, but this is a way in which you can flip the table. So as I select any of these specialties, I'll go with cardiology invasive. As I select this, now what's going to happen is I'm going to move from a specialty view to a benchmark view. So I'm going to now see all of those benchmarks related to that specialty in my table. So I've selected my one specialty and I have multiple benchmarks versus one benchmark, multiple specialties. Okay. From here, I can drill down even further. Again, I really like data. So let's say we're looking at total comp, worked RVUs, and total encounters for my comp packages that I'm putting together. Make my selections there, hit this radio button at the top, and now I've condensed it even further. If you get to this view and it's just not preferable, no worries. You can select any one of these these benchmarks here. By selecting it, it's just going to switch it right on back for me. Okay. To talk a little bit about this navigation column here in the middle, I have touched base on the save table. So that's where any of those tables that you've saved, where they're going to be housed. This D plus is our custom side of reporting. So again, for those of you who have been with us for some time, this is just renamed the Pro Report Builder. So we've renamed that just to say custom reports and tools, but it will take us into that custom side of data reporting, which we'll look at. This help section here in the middle, as I select this, this is also another place where glossaries are going to be housed. So we're trying to put it in multiple places for you, again, making it the easiest way for you to get that information and providing you with all those resources and support you may need as you're learning the navigation. You'll see here under help, there's our glossaries are going to be located here, and then also any additional pieces of education that are helpful when you're looking at the different data sets. All the way at the bottom, we're going to see DataDive benchmarks and filters. This is a great document to reference if you're wondering, does MGMA even capture data on this particular benchmark? They're all going to be listed on this form, also combined with all the filtering capabilities. So all that information is going to be there. Want to pop into the provider comp glossary. As we know, we were just looking at total compensation. This is just an example to show you what this looks like. So as I scroll down here to page 3, you'll see that total compensation, the definition is going to be listed out for me. These glossaries are going to explain all the terminology, definitions, and then there's going to even include the metrics that are included and excluded from that particular definition. Really important to ensure that we are comparing the same data in the same way when we're benchmarking. Okay. Again, I certainly don't want to make anybody seasick, but as I scroll down to page 7, here's where we're going to see that map of the United States. Okay, so you'll see now we have those different geographic sections: Western, Southern, Midwest, and Eastern. It's also going to list out all of the states that are included in that particular region for you. We have some abilities in the custom reporting that we're going to get into where we can drill down. As long as the sample size thresholds are met, we can even drill this data down to a state level. So for example, if I'm wanting to look at family medicine physician in the state of Colorado, that's just a custom report that we can generate. So we have the ability to do that. If we're wanting to create kind of our own region or a custom region, so maybe I'm wanting to pull these 4 corners, that's a way in which we can filter out that data. Lots of ways to customize these for you. You'll see that these documents are definitely not for faint of the heart. They can be quite extensive, but there's a lot of great information in here. So I would always encourage you looking at each one of these glossaries. This map of the United States is going to be included in all of them. Okay. To go back to our data table. So again, this is all located under the help section. And just select data tables here at the top. This contact us, so this next section here is going to provide you information to reach out to our data solutions team if you're having questions. Most of you likely have an account manager. You can always reach out to them as well. I know my information is going to be shared in the chat, so you can certainly reach out to me and we'll get you to the right people to get you taken care of and get you some resources as you're learning to navigate. All right, let's go ahead and hop into the custom reporting here. I'm going to stick with my example of provider compensation, but the custom side of reporting is really going to mimic the front-facing side of DataDive. So it's going to ask you to select what data set is it that you want, what year is it that you want, and really allow you to add selections there. So build or create a new report. They're both going to do the same thing. Again, more intuitive, just giving you several options to make sure that we're getting you to the right place. And as I select create new report, again, those different options are going to populate for me. So I'm going to stick with provider compensation. The year report I'm going to run is going to be 2019. You'll see directly located underneath that is going to be the standard report. This is referring to all of the data that's been submitted to us that we're using for benchmarking purposes. You also have this add my practice data. So let's say that you're wanting to create a graph to show benchmarking for internal medicine. These are for worked RVUs. Here's all the worked RVUs from the benchmarking data. But now I want to add my providers onto that same graph to see where my providers are falling. Are they within the metrics of which, or the benchmarking thresholds that we're wanting and what we're gearing towards? So just another way for you to view that information. The user guides that are going to be attached to the new platform are going to be located in this help section as well. So those should go live this week. The user guides are going to show you not only how to use DataDive, but also how to create these custom reports with things such as adding your own data. Okay. Tools and report layout. So this is going to let you select the the layout that you're trying to view here. So are you looking for one benchmark? Are you looking to compare benchmarks? It's just going to let you select, and then it's going to provide you a description of what that report is. Okay. I'm going to leave it with benchmark. You'll also see here on the right-hand side that it's going to show you an image of what that report looks like, or an example of what that will look like. I'm gonna hit continue here. And then here's where I'm gonna pull my data. So I'm gonna stick with compensation, and I'm gonna pull this. I'll pick a physician, and let's go with family medicine without OB. You'll see that all the specialties are gonna be listed here. Okay. Next is gonna be choose your benchmark. We notate on the front side of DataDive, we had just over 10. I think there's between 10 and 15 benchmarks. You'll see that my list is much longer as we get into the back. And we'll go with total compensation. Compare data by, so I still have those same filtering capabilities, but it's much more extensive on custom reporting. You'll see that my drop down has now increased here. Compare data by also allows for you to set up the report in the way that you would like. So if you have access to report this through Excel, it's going to ask you how you would like to report that. Limit data by. This is probably the most substantial. You'll see all of the different filtering capabilities we have here. So previously, when we were looking at geographic section, this is where we can show that information. We have demographic classification. So if we're looking at population, we can pull those minor geographic sections. This is also where we can drill down to a state level. You'll see there's lots and lots of ways in which you can slice and dice this data on the back. Okay. Choose percentiles and measures. So as we know, by default, we're going to have that 50th percentile located on the front. And then we also have the 10th, 25th, 75th, and 90th. Those are standard percentiles that we can pull on the front facing side of DataDive. We actually have the ability to pull any of those benchmarks at any percentile between the 10th and the 90th. So if you're wanting each individual percentile between the 10th and 90th, we can pull that for you. If you're wanting to look at maybe a range, the 40th to the 60th, we have the ability to do so. Maybe you're wanting the 32nd, a very specific number or value, we have the ability to do that as well. You'll see underneath here, it's going to tell you how to pull that information. So if you're wanting a range, you do by hyphen. If you're wanting to look at a specific number, you indicate that by a comma. So for this example, I'm just going to run the 35th to the 40th, and then I'll pull the 53rd. Underneath, you can add in the mean or the average of the data, standard deviation, and then also your group counts and counts. So if you're wanting that sample size, you certainly can add that. You're going to name your report. I keep saying the number keeps increasing, so I'm going to put 400, and I'm sure that's an exaggeration at this point, but I'm going to name this example 400. I'm going to save and continue. Okay, for those of you, again, that have been with us for some time or are familiar with the custom side of reporting, you know that in the old platform, we would make our selections, and then it would bring us to a screen that would say process now. It was not the most efficient process, which we found, because what was happening is it would just stay up there as process now. Let's say you forget about it. You go to your list and you're looking for your reports and realizing I never processed it because this process now button had not been selected. The new platform, you don't need to do that any longer. You make your selections, you save and continue, and then it brings you right into here. So alleviating that piece of frustration for our users that's no longer included in the new platform. Okay, so now we have example 400. We're looking here at the selection that I had, the benchmark that I chose, and then the specialty. It's going to list out the 35th and each metric all the way to the 40th, or each percentile value. And then we have that 53rd that I have included as well. From here, you can export out to PDF if you have additional access, export out to Excel. And then we also have a share functionality here. So maybe you're with a small practice and there's a group of you who have the same access into DataDive. You want to create a report and you want to share it with your coworkers, ensuring that you all are pulling the same data in the same way. That's a way in which you can do so. Okay. Once we've created our reports and we want to look at the list, we just go to My Saved Reports. This report I've just run is going to be at the top of the list. So again, previously you would scroll all the way down the list and it would be located at the bottom. We've flipped that. So now you can see this at the top here. You are going to have some filtering capability. Imagine that, we're all about filters. So here you're going to be able to filter it out. Let's say I only want to look at my provider comp reports. That's where you can pull it and filter that information out. One thing that's really important to mention, and I'm so excited about this, all of our reports, so any of us who had access, you as our users who have access, if you've generated reports and custom reporting in the previous platform, they all will carry over into the new platform. So you certainly are not going to need to go back in and recreate all of those reports again. They're going to follow your access. So any you, particularly with your access, it will follow through for you. You'll see here you have this ellipses. So clicking on this, you can download as a PDF, Excel options. Those are all going to be there as well. You can view the report, maybe edit and make some changes. Maybe I want total compensation, but now I want to go back in and I want to pull worked RVUs. Just again, making it more efficient and more intuitive. So I'm not having to recreate and generate all those steps again. Go in, make my changes, save as a copy, and then boom, it's right there for me listed out in my reports again. Okay. The delete function is found in here. As you can see with my 5 pages of reports, this is not something I utilize very often, but I would always encourage if there are reports that you're no longer needing, just go ahead and delete them and free up some space for yourself. Okay. From here, if we're wanting to go back into the table view, so going to that front facing side of DataDive, just return to data tables. That's going to bring us right back to the front. I'm going to touch base on some of the other data sets that we have available and pop into each one and show you what they look like here. So I'm going to change my data set and I'm going to go to procedural profile. We're going to take a peek at that billing and coding profile, again, allowing for providers of the same specialty to benchmark to identify those billing and coding patterns. You'll see here, you're going to want to choose your specialty, drop down with all of those listed there. And then we have select CPT code range. So this is going to break up the CPT codes. This is allowing what I currently have selected, so that E&M, eval and management code series. But we have some additional here. Maybe you're an orthopedic practice and you want to concentrate on your surgery codes. This is how you can do so. Other HCPCS codes, so looking at that procedural based billing. All CPT codes is going to provide you one long list of all the codes that have been submitted from that particular specialty. And then top 20 codes is going to be just that, the top 20 codes that are used. Still have some filtering capabilities to look at that information, again, providing for a more apple-to-apple comparison at that granular level. And then you'll see what I'm looking at here in my table are the E&M CPT code series broken up by description. So now I'm looking at established visits from my E&M codes. As I select this, it's going to narrow it down for me even more. So taking that data even a step further. Now what I'm seeing are all the different CPT codes that are used for established patients. Okay. Those are all going to be listed for you here. This particular profile also comes with some images, so you can print this information out into a pie chart, a bar graph, or even your bell curve distribution. Great way to include this into presentations, or if you're just wanting the images, as you select PDF, the images are going to print out for you. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a peek here at management and staff. Again, this is going to be all the salaries, wages, benefits for those positions that are outside of providers. A couple things to mention about this particular data set that are really cool. You can actually look at this at a state level. So not only are you able to look at national or regional level, but you can also pull the state level on the front facing side of DataDive. Okay, you're not needing to go in and create a custom report. You have the capability to do so right here on the front side. Under the benchmarks, we have total comp, some bonus information, retirement information, hourly rate compensation. Total comp is going to be reflective of those salaries, and then hourly rate is going to be just that hourly rate compensation. Excuse me. Always recommend when you're looking at this data set to toggle between the two. The reason being is some organizations may submit their data to us at a salary level for their medical assistants. So they may say, our MAs, we pay a salary, and we're going to capture that data under total compensation. Other organizations may say, we actually pay our MAs an hourly rate. So I just always recommend when you're benchmarking to toggle between the two here. Okay, I'll stick with, excuse me, total compensation. You'll see what I have selected here is going to be a short list for those 200 positions that I mentioned we're currently capturing data on. The reason being is these are our roll-up categories. So as I select view roll-ups, as I unselect that, it's now going to expand the table for me. So not only am I going to see clinical roles, I'm now going to see all of those positions that are included under a clinical role. You'll hear me refer to the glossaries a lot. They have a lot of vital information in there. When looking at it for management and staff, it will list out each one of those roles and positions that we're looking for. It also is accompanied by about 3 to 5 bullet points of a job description. Again, just ensuring that we're looking at benchmarking the same position in the same way. Maybe we have it listed as a referral coordinator, and maybe you have it listed as a patient liaison or something of that nature, an example of that sort. By looking at those job descriptions, it then helps us narrow that information down and say, yes, this is truly the position that I'm wanting to benchmark. We still have the same filtering capabilities that we know and love. So we're able to look at a national level. We can look at a geographic section. We can look at organizational ownership. But for these roles, we actually have some additional new ones as well. So we can look at ACMPE status. If you have employees who have completed the ACMPE certification through MGMA, this is a way in which you can compare their compensation from somebody who maybe has not. Certified in position, you'll hear me refer to medical assistants a lot. I know this is a position that everybody's hiring for right now. So when we're looking at MAs, are we looking at somebody who's certified or registered and wanting to compare their compensation to maybe somebody who doesn't hold the same kind of credentials? Formal education level, if you're looking to onboard a director, or supervisor, or practice manager, or administrator, and you're wanting to compare the compensation from somebody who holds an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, an MBA, or maybe none of the above, this is a way in which you can compare their compensation. Okay? Also have years of experience. Wanting to look at somebody who maybe has 1 to 3 years versus 7 to 10. Again, just another way for you to filter that data down. Okay? Can still limit. So we still can look at somebody who holds a bachelor's degree and we want to focus on the southern section. So still the ability to apply those different filters. Okay? Percentiles and measures are still going to be located here on the side. So adding in your sample size and adding in those different percentiles, and they can be added into your table. This table mimics a lot of what we find in provider compensation because we're still looking at compensation. We're just looking at those different roles. So again, the easiest way and most efficient way is to use this search feature at the bottom. As I start to type in registered nurse, for example, anything with that naming convention is now going to populate for me. So now I'm looking at a national level, the total compensation, so an annual salary for a registered nurse. Okay. Again, I can't stress this enough. I recommend saving some tables. Reason being is, these are likely those clinical roles, something that you would be filling most frequently. Save a table for it. You can refer back and then the information's just right there for you. You still can click through and show your selected sections as well, if that's something of interest to you. And again, still the same information as far as exporting. All of that's going to be located at the bottom. All right, let's pop into cost and revenue. So again, looking at the different costs, operating costs, staffing costs, expenses, looking at the different revenue, and of course, our staffing ratios are also located in this particular data set. I'm going to switch this to staffing for my benchmark. I'm going to go ahead and leave it with family practice as my default, if you will, for my example that I have here. And then you'll see now that we have selected data cut. What's happening is the data that is submitted to us for this particular data set is done so at a practice level. So taking all the information from your practice and submitting that data to us in that way. When we're looking at that data, we now need a way to normalize that. So we need a data cut. So this allows for us to apply that data cut lots of different ways. So as it relates to staffing, we know that all of our practices and all of our organizations staff differently. So some may staff from a body-to-body scenario. So I got 5 doctors and I want 5 medical assistants. So looking at that body-to-body scenario, we would apply the per FTE physician or per FTE provider. The difference in the two is per FTE provider is going to include your APP level providers and your physicians. Per FTE physician is going to be just the physician level. Maybe your practice is staff to productivity. So maybe you're wanting to look at total RVUs or per 10,000 worked RVUs. Before I started with MGMA, I actually was a practice manager for quite some time, the better part of the last 15 years. And I would use this frequently. I had an internal medicine practice where we were utilizing that per FTE provider. So we were staffing that body-to-body scenario and really feeling like I need some additional staff, but I need some data to support that business justification. So this is where I went to. I looked at per 10,000 worked RVUs because I knew that my providers were producing more than just that body-to-body scenario. I was actually able to look at this, implement some changes because I now was able to support that from a business justification. So again, just a very brief example on ways that you can utilize this data. Okay, we also have from a volume standpoint, so maybe looking at per 10,000 patients or per 10,000 encounters. Okay. You still have the same ability or same capabilities, if you will, to filter this data down. So if you're wanting to geographic section, organizational ownership, all of those are going to be located here for you. What we're seeing right now is a roll-up category. So we're looking at that total. So you will see total clinical support staff is what I'm looking at. You do have this option here to expand the table. As I select that, it's now going to break down not only clinical support staff, but now I'm able to see medical assistants, RNs, LPNs, nurse aides from that clinical support standpoint. Okay, so here's my total clinical support staff. So the way that we would read this is that for family medicine, I'm looking at a national level currently. We're looking at staffing, and I'm staffing that per FTE provider. Maybe I have some NPs and I have some physicians in my practice. I'm looking at total clinical support staff. We would read this at the 50th percentile of the data. It's supporting that you would need 1.5 employees for, or clinical support employees for every FTE provider. If you had 5 providers, you would apply that labor of love math, and you would just apply that there and make the applicable changes. Okay. One thing I like to mention is that when we're looking at this data, me as a strategist, I'm always going to recommend using this total number and not necessarily breaking it down to each role. The reason being is then you as an organization or you as a practice know what's best supported in your practice roles. So by taking that information and saying, I'm going to allocate this 1.5, if that's the number you want to use, or 1.49, I'm going to allocate those FTEs in a medical assistant role. Maybe I don't have a need for registered nurses in the practice that I'm in. So just something to keep in mind, you'll always want to look at the total number of that. Okay. I'll just pop into a few of these, but let's look at expenses. This is getting down to the expense level at a practice at a real granular level. We can look in here for drug supply. We can find leasing information, furniture supply, med surg supply. So again, just getting down to that real granular level. This is also where we're going to find our malpractice insurance, or professional liability is going to be located in here as well. Professional liability insurance. I certainly would recognize for those of you who complete provider compensation packages, maybe this is something that you're going to want to include in there. So this is where we can benchmark that information. Okay, looking at charges and revenue. So looking at not only medical gross revenue, or not looking at only medical revenue, but what are some other revenue streams? I use this pretty often when I'm looking with my family practice, family medicine practices. Maybe you are part of an incentive program or receiving government revenue in that way. So this is a way in which you can find that additional other medical revenue, is by looking here. Let's go ahead and hop now into practice operations. So again, looking at the structure of the practice, this is where we can find some of those patient satisfaction metrics that, again, we all know and love. So currently what I have selected, I'll stick with my family medicine example here. Currently what I'm looking at is turnover and hire rates. I have some different percentiles that are selected, and I also have the group counts of the sample size as well. Certainly, we recognize that currently this is 2019 data, and we have 2020 data that's available. And then as we go through our survey cycle season, we'll have 2021 data available. World according to Liz, this is going to look much different for the 2021 data than it is the 2020. We certainly recognize the start of the pandemic. A lot of employees were not necessarily leaving their positions. Job security is very important. And we also saw a shift in the year of 2021. So definitely anticipating what that data is going to look like as that's produced for us here. Demographics is going to be a list of about 60 different questions that were asked to our survey participants. This was an elective part of the process of them submitting their data. So sometimes you'll see that their response rate is just a little bit lower, but there's lots of different questions in here. So this particular question was action taken to improve wait time. So this is just showing in a yes or no bar graph form. Okay. Let me just kind of move around here a bit, pick some other specialties. I'm going to pick multi-specialty. All right. The one that was actually right below this question that I like to look at pretty frequently is charging a no-show rate. This is also where you can find that information. Okay. Total operational hours is going to be just that. So the operational hours of the practice, maybe you're an OB practice and you're wanting to extend your hours, provide for some more patient availability or appointment access for your patients. This is a way in which you can benchmark what are our friends in the same specialty, what are they doing? Are they open during the evenings? Are they open on the weekends? Again, you can just benchmark that information here. Patient portal utilization. So looking at if your patients do have a portal and which way are they utilizing it? Are they doing so to communicate with their providers? Are they doing so to refill a request or submit a refill request? Are they doing so to pay a bill or to view a lab? So again, just allowing for you to look into patient portal utilization. I'll end with scheduling here. So touching base again on those patient satisfaction metrics that we know that are combined. So looking at minutes spent in the waiting room, minutes spent in the exam room, total minutes as whole for the patient, average appointment times for each of those appointment visits, third next available appointment. We certainly recognize that typically the first available and second available are going to be same day holds or even same day cancellations. So really feeling like the most representative was that third next available appointment. This is also where you can find your no-show rate. Again, another hot KPI that we see very frequently. So you're able to see that here. And if you do charge a no-show fee, let's see what some benchmarking is for that no-show fee rate. I certainly realize this was a lot of information in a short amount of time. If you do have any questions, again, you can drop those in the chat. I can certainly respond. I know that Lauren's probably doing a great job of responding to those questions as they're coming in, but please feel free to reach out anytime you may have any needs, or if you have any questions for me, I can certainly also get you in contact with your account managers. At this time, I'm going to pass it back over to Andrew Walker.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. So first of all, thank you all for joining us today. We know it was an hour out of your day. We appreciate that. As Liz mentioned, this is a lot of information, especially late in the day. So with the 4 minutes we have left, I do want to offer that up as a Q&A session for anyone who is still interested. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. The team is all still here on standby. We're happy to answer those for you. If you don't have any additional questions at this point, again, you're welcome to jump off. If you want an enhanced and personalized one-on-one training around the new tool, email Liz and we can go ahead and set that up for your organization. And you can email her again. It's been in the chat, but it's lgurley, L-G-U-R-L-E-Y at mgma.com. We can set that up for you. And then also, if you have any questions around your level of access, as we've discussed briefly throughout the demonstration today, reach out to your respective account manager to discuss options for that. And if, again, you do not know who your account manager is, you can email Liz and we'll be happy to point you all in the right direction. And I'm not seeing any more questions pop up in the chat. So with that, we will wrap this up. We will have a recording available that will be sent out to you all within the next day or so here once it is scrubbed and edited. So you'll have that to share internally. But again, reach out to us with any questions, any needs. We're happy to help and we're here for you all. So thank you very much. We hope you guys have a great day. Take care.